Howdy folks, everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Voice chat, it's true. Alright, let's see, not a lot new this week. As we mentioned last week, EAP is out. That's our big deploy news. We don't have a new deploy for this week, but we're in the process of getting all the other viewers merged with that. Let's see, anybody had a chance to try out EAP since it went live? There, I'll change to my regular have.
I would say Euclid, you don't count, but technically you do, so.
Yeah, the sky is probably EAP stuff, isn't it? No crashes is good. So let's see, graphics folks are working on kind of figuring out what's next. There'll be some probably high priority bug fixes, but we're also looking to do kind of new graphics infrastructure stuff that we can talk about more when we get to that stage. Let's see, other than that, I don't think we've really got much new. I've talked a little bit in previous meetings about trying to improve the performance of jelly dolls and sort of turn them into just standard humanoids instead of trying to render all the attachments and everything. Made some headway on that, but I'm poking around in the animation system. One problem is that if you're using a non-human AV and you've got animations that are trying to change your skeleton configuration, you know, move your bones around, then it's going to look really screwy when you try to display it as just a regular system avatar. So I've been working on trying to get that sorted, basically pausing the animations. The problem is if you pause all the animations and you go into a T-pose and it looks terrible. So what you really need to do is pause the sort of current set of animations and then maybe run just one or two sort of standard compatible ones instead, like the stand. So there's probably a way to do that, but still deciphering the wonders of our motion controller system to try to find. IK support, yeah, I'm pretty sure that doesn't count as being at it, but it would be nice. So, I don't know, I guess I think that's it for this week. Anything that folks want to ask about or chat about? Hey Jack, fire away, yeah. You're regarding name changes, I don't know a lot about them. If anybody here does know the answer to the question, we're happy to kick it around, but I think most of the folks here weren't really involved in that project. Yeah, web user group might be good for that. Are we going to provide a way for people to find out previous names customers had? I was thinking no, but I'm not positive about that. Dan, were you happen to know that? Have you been doing anything with the name change stuff?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Okay, well, if Asa said no, then the answer is no.
The concern might be privacy, would be my guess why that was done.
I suspect that's the case, yeah. Jack, you said you had a question about a feature suggestion. What was the Jira link for it? If it got closed as a dupe and it's not a dupe, then we should chat about it. Alright, pulling up the link. Object property intangible. So object status intangible would not be clicked by the user. I'm pretty sure that is a dupe. We've had a bunch of requests about how things interact with clicks and whether you can kind of click through things. Are you sure that it's not a dupe? What's the difference between this request and the other ones here? Okay, let's see, so the one that was marked as a dupe is 227500. Click touch disabled, needs server-side support. Alright, so I think the intent of this is that it, if we have support for click touch disabled, then we should be able to have objects that don't respond to clicks. But as it mentions, it's server-side work is needed for that, which doesn't currently exist. So if we did implement the server-side support for that, would that not do what your proposal was intended to do? Yeah, sure. Anybody's welcome to use voice. Fire away.
Never tried this. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hear you fine.
Okay, nice. So what the dupe, which was marked basically is about, is just a new click action which you can select if you create an object and you just like choose what happens on click. But that's actually something completely different than I was talking about, even though it probably sounds similar, so I can understand the confusion. What setting an object to click touch disabled or just selecting none, which is like the UI way of doing it, basically means that nothing happens when you click on it. But the object is still obstructing the raycasts, which determine which object your mouse cursor is hovering over.
You can't actually click through it in that case.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
and
I see what you mean.
that was the idea behind my thing.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
It came up when I was talking with a few other content creators actually, and the thing basically is if you have a transparent object that you use for some sort of effect. That could, for example, be some sort of God ray effect in a garden where you have like a light beam from breaking through the clouds, or if you are an addict and you want to make a cool lighting effect coming out of the roof windows, so sort of like volumetric lighting, faking of course, because that's not going to come to Second Life anytime soon. It basically every time you would do it, it would look pretty great, but it would be like sort of a half-transparent light beam. But it would really, really obstruct gameplay because you would, for example, if there would be a chair below that window, you literally couldn't click it because your viewer would try to click the light beam, and even if it has a click action of none, it's still there, and you can't click on the actual chair that's behind it.
Okay, yeah.
I've seen people build a lot of things actually, like cave entrances, for example, where they use the same technology or the same technique to darken the area when you walk in. It just doesn't work. Like, the problem is not only that you can't click on objects, but I know many people control Second Life in different ways, but I always do it by like holding my mouse button down on my avatar when I move around. But when I'm standing in one of these spaces where this technique has been used, and I try to walk away again, then I literally can't even click my avatar anymore, so I really only awkwardly can move around. Because
Yeah.
these semi-transparent objects are obstructing the click. So I
Yeah.
was
Yeah,
thinking
no,
this would be...
I see what you mean. It's I'm sure that this is a dupe, but I see your point that it's not really exactly a duplicate of this Jira. I think we probably
Well, I
need to
have...
dig a little more to find the Jira that it's a duplicate of. I'll make a note to take a look at that and see what I can find. I don't really know what the status of this is. We may have already accepted this in another Jira, or we may not have. But it's worth doing a little more checking to get it accounted for correctly.
I explained a few ideas I had about this specifically in the ticket, so if you find the time, maybe you can read through it.
Yeah.
Maybe you could like understand my point and my ideas better.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'll take a look at it. I think the basic idea that we want to be able to click through things, I understand the motivation there, but I'm just not sure if we've got the right, if we've got the right linking to other Jiras in the. But I'll take a look at it. Let's see. Lucy, you were saying something about being able to click through transparent. But you said only for things that are 100% alpha, so like completely invisible. Only with HUDs. Okay.
That does work, but that's rather useless if you want to make an effect.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll take a look at that. Yeah, I think we do understand the motivation, and it's something to potentially consider, but I think we've probably got it somewhere else in the system already. I just need to.
Sounds like something that would be relatively painless to implement because it's like 99% client side. You only would have to add one additional object state, I guess, to the backend. But I don't know how that looks, so I can't really.
Yeah. At this point, we're not in a good situation for trying to add new backend behaviors because nearly all the backend developers are working on the Uplift project, which involves moving all of our backend machines to the cloud, and is a huge project. There's dozens or probably hundreds of different services that all need to be ported over. So it's tough to find bandwidth for working on this kind of thing, but we're trying to. Yeah. Well, this request is for an additional object property, so I mean to support an additional object property that definitely requires backend changes. You have to persist the information in the object, and that stuff is all stored on the back end. Of course, a lot of the code for actually interacting with objects in the scene is viewer side, but there's going to be at least some.
Yeah,
back-end work
that's what
needed.
I said. Like you probably would need to add like the new options so you can even select them. But the actual raycast detection and stuff, I'm pretty sure that's not handled by the backend. That would be rather crazy. Really? Now that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we do like the cast array stuff is, anything that's LL something like it's LSL function. Those things all run on the back end. And
Yeah, but I'm not talking about scriptures. I mean, like literally in the viewer, which determines where your mouse cursor is over. It's not done in the backend. I hope.
I think there's some of both. But yeah, well, anyway, we'll take a look at it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. That would be really cool.
Yeah, it makes sense for something like fog, which is, just intended to provide atmosphere and not be interacted with, that you'd like to be able to kind of click through it. Makes sense. Yeah, in terms of how hard it would be, or whether we had the people to tackle it now, it's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. Placing glod, that sounds interesting. What would be the technique? I mean, what tech would it be based on? Mesh optimizer. Yeah, we've talked about that in meetings here before. I think it seems like people generally said good things about it. So how far along have you gotten with it? Have you had a chance to actually try it out as a GLOD replacement? Yeah, no, I think I think if we had a if we had a pull request for something that gave better automatic LODs, we would definitely be interested in it. It's something that has come up a lot, and obviously making good LODs is hard, and the more we could automate it, the better experience we could offer people. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Auto LODs can be bad, but they're rarely as bad as the ones that people are making on purpose. I mean, what you tend to get is people making LEDs that consist of 2 triangles if they're trying to do it manually.
That's something the graphics team's been talking about, is enforcing an auto LED. No problems with anything. The idea has come up though, and it's any solutions or options that people are thinking about, definitely something we're interested in. That's for sure.
Oh, degenerate triangles. Yeah, we were talking about that quite a bit a couple weeks ago. The multi-object LOD triangle imbalance issue. Sorry, Lucy, you've lost me. Which particular issue are you thinking about there? Yeah, Aki, it seems to go both ways. People think that the more triangles you have in your base LOD, the better, and then the fewer triangles you have in your other LODs, the better. I don't know. Yeah, Lucy, you mean the way that the triangles get allocated when we do auto LOD generation? We're not being consistent about the kind of proportions there. Okay, yeah. Yeah, well, I agree. I don't think GLOD is really best of breed. It's it's what we have. It's what we initially implemented when we did mesh upload. Many years ago at this point. But if we had something better, we'd be happy to use that instead.
I know this would probably be a bit of a big task, but I mean, would it be possible to put something on the wiki showing people how to create their own LODs? Because I think a lot of people don't really understand what they need to do to create their own LOD levels.
Actually, I would agree a lot with that. There isn't a lot guidance, and there's also not a lot like suggestions, as in which triangle density for which scale of object would be adequate. There isn't really. People just have to guess, and they will get their information from different sources and stuff.
It's also that, but like making sure that all the materials that are on your main object are on the other ones, even if like triangles from those you've gotten rid of them, you still need to assign at least one triangle to each of the materials, otherwise it just won't work. I think some people get errors pop up and then just go, it's too much work, I'm just going to use the auto ones, which are really bad generally.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I also, like, my hope is that they will just rework the entire upload progress at some point and fix a few of these problems, this being one of them. Because I think this is something that probably isn't really necessary. Just feels like a little forced to always have every texture set in your object in every LOD state.
Yeah, some of that may be coming from the way that our kind of internal object representation works too, but it doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense. In terms of getting better documentation, if we have documentation, we're certainly happy to include it. In terms of generating a lot more documentation in-house, I would love to see us do that, but realistically, I don't think it's going to be happening in the near term. We don't have a lot of internal resources for documentation, and honestly, a lot of the experts in kind of best practices for content creation are, you guys and other residents out there. We don't, the people who are writing the code are not usually the people who are making the cutting edge content. So, while we're happy to try to facilitate information sharing, it's not always the case that we can just kind of sit down and dash off some documents that describe the best way to do everything and just kind of pass it along to everybody. Yeah, the wiki did used to be open to everybody. Unfortunately, that didn't work out that well.
Is there somebody in charge of the wiki who maybe people can go to and say, I would like to work on it, and then just kind of take people on a case-by-case basis who are going to help out with it, but maybe give them some kind of like test period to make sure they're doing things right?
we actually do that. There are people outside the lab who have access to the wiki. Beck is posting the information there in chat. Yeah, having recommendations on textile density would be nice. I think that would be most useful if we actually had kind of feedback in our build tools to let people know when something did or didn't have reasonable texel densities. But right now, it's pretty it's pretty much of a free for all. Yeah, really, the only enforcement we have now is just a limit on how many pixels you can have in your image, but not on how wide an area you can apply it to. Yeah, Jack, one thing we are working on that I've talked about some in previous meetings is trying to improve the rendering cost calculations. One problem with some of the extremely complex models is that our functions don't do a good job of pointing out that this content is overly complex. And if we did a better job of doing that, it wouldn't magically fix everything, but it would be at least a start. It's something that we could use as a basis for giving people better feedback about that kind of thing.
How would you go to implement something like that, though? Because that sounds really complicated. Always like context dependent on what quality is good and what is bad.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are different things you can look at. But the way we do it now, it doesn't do a good job of just accounting for sheer geometric complexity. You can have some types of content that have a ridiculous number of triangles and don't actually get charged for very much. For that kind of content, even just an extremely naive thing where you just count up the number of triangles would be better than what we have.
Yeah, I think if you look into that, you should probably also think if you see an opportunity to fact that zeroing out LODs effectively just gives you free land impact.
yeah, that's another thing we need to look at. We want to make sure that people are never penalized for adding LOD.
Because that's the thing. I've been trying to get into Second Life a lot now, and this game is throwing a lot of bricks in my way. Like, I'm trying to create really high quality assets because that's something I'm passionate about. But every time I do something new, I find a new undocumented quirk that's just like, oh, cool, that completely invalidates everything I've been working for the last few days. Yay.
Yeah, I hear you. It's an extremely complex system that probably wasn't designed up front nearly as much as it should have been, and has just kind of accumulated new complexity over time. And we can't really start over from scratch because it would break all the existing stuff out there. So it is an ongoing challenge trying to make things somewhat better and usable without existing world.
I think the main issue is not necessarily getting people even to do the proper LODs, it's changing user perception of what they should be buying. I know myself, I create higher detail items because that's what people demand, and the same goes for clothing. We all got these complexity numbers and the slider, but people just rank it up because they want to see all this stuff. They like the high detail stuff, but really it comes down to changing what the end user is wanting to buy and getting out there, really promoting that they are creating the lag because of this stuff, and then the demand for that sort of stuff will fall and we can start creating more optimized items, I guess. Right, they don't care. They just want it to look amazing.
do people really like request these absurd levels of
They really
meshes, though?
do. I've heard from other creators that like they'll create a plant and they'll use planes and masked textures, and they'll get complained about for not creating a real plant because each leaf wasn't meshed.
That's just optimization. Oh wow.
Nope, they've created a fake plant.
It's multiple problems, education and demands and unreasonable expectations all rolled into one.
Interesting.
I mean, one limitation, I think, even if people wanted to, buy low complexity items or whatever, they don't really have any tools to know how complex something is. There's no information in the marketplace that just kind of. I mean, there's information in the marketplace, but there's no it's not sort of standardized. There's nothing kind of like the ingredients label on groceries or whatever that tells you it contains 200% of your daily allowance of polygons or whatever. So I think that's part of the problem, is that there's people are working from kind of different perspectives on what they think is good, but they also don't really have good information about what they're getting.
Actually, while we're at the topic of displaying stuff on the marketplace, I have a question, and that is there any way of seeing different LOD states of an object that you want to buy on the marketplace before you actually buy it? Like if you can't go to an in-world store?
Yeah, the marketplace doesn't really have detailed information on what's sold, and it would be hard to generate that sort of stuff automatically. The problem is that the thing you buy and the thing you actually wind up wearing can be very different, right? You can buy something that then gives you a box that then you have to res and take the contents out of and so forth. So how would you sort of automatically analyze a marketplace listing to even figure out what's being sold? It seems like a really hard problem, just because the process of buying and using items is...
You probably can't really do that realistically, because it just depends too much on context.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much that's done by scripts, and it's so it's harder than one would like.
But the thing
Yeah,
I was
probably tag stuff, I guess, is the way we do that. Right? We have tag clothing as basically being male clothing or female clothing or something else, and have some sort of a stand to show that. Right. The problem is we don't have information at all about what classification of these objects are, and without that, that's extremely difficult to show a preview because we don't have the context for what it is.
Because what I was going on here, basically if I'm like a buyer that has no idea about, let's say, computer graphics and stuff, and I see, oh, this is a cool object I want to buy. I mean, it's rather expensive, but the preview on the marketplace looks really nice, and it shows that it only has like 2 land impact or something like that. That's pretty nice. And then you buy it, and it does look really great, but only in the first level of detail, and all are zeroed out. You might have paid like a few thousand in-game currency for that. I personally would say that is a ripoff, because you are kind of not really getting what you were expecting to buy.
Yeah. I know, a lot of these things do have demo versions that you can get for free and check out. So that's I would always recommend doing that if you have the option. But even then, to really understand the complexity and the state of the LODs and so forth, you need to have a fair amount of sophistication in using the in-game tools.
What's the estimate that people think that there's demos available? And for clothes, it just seems to be a little higher priority, but other stuff, I don't know. What's the kind of what are people seeing out in the wild here, so to speak? Is it 10% of objects, 10% of clothing? Is it 50%?
I feel like for clothing it must be higher, like must be somewhere around 80 surely. For furniture I don't think it's a thing. I know for myself I create furniture and decor and I have all my stuff in world, like everything is rezzed out for people to look at, so I don't feel like demo is that necessary. Especially when they need to
Yeah,
be
if you
testing
can actually
animation.
inspect the objects in
Oh.
world, that's another good option.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't think it's a problem for experienced or power users that have been on a while and know the tools and know how to get around. If I'm a new person and I'm like, hey, this is my first house. I just like paid 15 euros to get whatever prefurbished Linden house or something like that. I really like this game. Let's see if I can decorate it. Oh, this looks nice. Oh, wow, it looks ugly once I move the camera 10 centimeters away. Well, that's absolutely unusable. I mean, that would be a really bad experience.
I think that comes down to the whole like end user perceptions as well, because we're all getting asked to make things that are such low land impact that you do have to zero out the last lot and have like create really cut down other load levels, and like a lot of people are just doing it based on the auto generation, which does make things just crumple into a mess really quickly.
Yep. That's really not good. And the other problem is that is like people demand. I didn't know that, but I trust you that when you say it, people demand high quality meshes and also low land impact, which means creators have to cheat and are kind of forced by the economy to zero out the LODs. And then people will go like, oh wow, this looks really crap. And then other people will say, oh, that's easy, you just have to increase the level of detailed drawing distance. And then they will do that. And then they will be like, oh wow, this game has terrible performance. This is not fun.
Yeah,
Like,
that's pretty
it's a
good
rabbit hole
summary
where
there.
you just get deeper and deeper. And I don't know how to fix it, to be honest. That's a really difficult task.
Yeah, I mean the first piece, and it is only the first piece that we're trying to do, is to give people better information and more control. So that they can find out that their object is a lag monster, or they can see that their LODs are terrible. But we don't really make it easy for people to even find out that information now, and once you know that, also being able to have some control over, well, if I'm surrounded by avatars that are insanely complex, I want an easy way to not have my performance destroyed and show most of the. So it's partly about improving education, and it's partly about giving people better control. Because if you don't know what's going on, or you don't know what you can do about it, then it doesn't really help.
Yeah, I actually agree a lot. Like the market would probably stabilize itself a lot if people would have more information on what they are actually, more statistics and maybe some more preview features or something. So you can actually see, oh wow, this looks really crap. Once I move 10 centimeters away, I'm not going to buy that.
So you think it would be beneficial if we had multiple pictures, one where the content creator was showing off their sort of best picture, and then a couple more with basically the first LOD, second LOD, auto-generated by us on the back end, and that way people would actually see, hey, this is how it actually looks in game. Do you think that would actually help to some degree?
It would definitely help. I mean, we are in the in the year 2020, so web technology has gone far away. Maybe even implement some sort of live renderer that previews the object. But that would still require some sort of moderation, because creators don't only upload the mesh object; they upload like packages and stuff. So, or there have to be like an actual content browser or something that lets you select each part of the link set that's being sold.
Yeah, we wouldn't
I don't know.
replace the author one. The author can still present, hey, here's
Yeah, of course.
the best, because they want to present that in the best light possible, right? Because auto generation doesn't always cover all cases, unfortunately, and so it doesn't have the right lighting that you'd want, proper sizing and scaling and everything else that you'd want with that. So, but maybe having both might be something that would help actually.
Yeah, well, and you know, the most important case to handle would just be cases where the model doesn't have any, you know, useful LED at all. You know, if we could provide good automated options for those cases, that seems like that would address probably 90% right there. But the amount of stuff in world that actually has decent LEDs already is
There are a lot of, like, if it's about 3D assets or maybe 3D printing assets, there are a lot of marketplaces out there on the internet, which have a few very interesting ideas of displaying objects on there. I mean, it would be a little more complicated for Second Life, of course, because you wouldn't want, like, to just upload the object to the client, to the web client, because that would probably be pretty bad for piracy. But it would definitely help.
yeah. I mean, it's a good point that we're not targeting the same audience that your typical Steam game is. We've got people running, you know, a lot of our audience is running considerably, you know, older and less powerful hardware. And we've never tried to set the bar so that you needed to have, you know, a kind of a AAA game compatible
Can you still hear me?
to use it. But on the other hand, a lot of people make content that's so complex that you kind of wind up needing it anyway.
Yeah, I would say, Sneak, a portion of our user base does not care about the latest technical specs. They just want to just view the world and have fun. They don't understand the difference between a third-tier GPU versus a first-tier GPU. Such not their interest. Yeah, exactly. The demographics and the hardware is definitely much older than Steam, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I sometimes feel way too young to be around here.
And we do have people who are, you know, running quite modern hardware and, you know, can you know, handle complex scenes and so forth. But it's unfortunate if content is designed, you know, to kind of only work for those people, because it's not. It's certainly not the bulk of the market.
That's probably even more reason why there should be stuff like guidelines on how objects should be created, what texel density, triangle density. So there's like a middle ground where people stick to. And I mean, like, low poly objects can still look really good because in 3D software, especially if you sculpt, you still sculpt like a lot of detail, don't just bake it down. And to be fair, you really, in many cases, if it's done properly, you really can't see a difference. So maybe that would even satisfy your customers, Yellow.
Yeah, having some guidelines probably for low, mid, high, and ultra might be beneficial. Saying, hey, this is a reasonable number to have for these different settings, and here's how to optimize content for those qualities. Because right now, I don't think we have anything on that. People just make the highest stuff they can, and everyone sort of demands it, so it kind of compounds the problem. There's no one's kind of reining that in.
Yeah. I'm amazed people are using XP because I wouldn't think, you know, I don't think anything could even still run on XP. I think it would just crash when it starts getting
Right, I was
messages it doesn't
surprised
recognize
too.
or whatever.
Ow. My computer was complaining I was still on Windows 8. How are they on XP?
Wow. Yeah, we have Windows 7
I had so
isn't
many
supported
upgrade
anymore.
nightmares. I was like, no, I just don't want to upgrade. People's computers just automatically restarting and crashing and horrible things.
Oh, there, question